My wife's emotional affair with my best friend completely shattered our entire friend group and left me broken. Hey Reddit. My world fell apart the day I discovered my wife had been having an emotional affair with one of my closest friends. It wasn't just the betrayal that cut deep, it was the fact that it shattered our entire friend group, leaving me standing in the wreckage of relationships I once thought were unbreakable. When you build your life around certain people, when you trust them with your secrets, your happiness, your late-night conversations filled with laughter and inside jokes, you never imagine that one of them could be the one to destroy it all. But that's exactly what happened, and I never saw it coming. It all started subtly, the kind of thing you wouldn't notice unless you were actively looking for it. My wife, Sarah, had always been friendly with my best friend, Jake. We had all been part of the same group for years, hanging out every weekend, planning trips together, even celebrating holidays as one big family. There were no red flags, no reason for me to suspect that something deeper was developing between them. But looking back, I can see the small shifts in behavior, the moments that should have raised alarms but didn't. I remember how Sarah's phone was always in her hand, how she started texting more than usual, her face lighting up at messages she never shared. She became more distant from me, more engaged in conversations that didn't involve me, and every now and then, I would catch her laughing at something on her phone, only for her to quickly put it away when I walked into the room. At first, I chalked it up to normal friendship. Jake was someone we both trusted, someone who had been a rock for us in tough times. He had been my best man at our wedding, the guy I turned to when life got difficult. The thought of him crossing any boundaries with Sarah was unimaginable. But then I started noticing the way they interacted when we were all together. The lingering eye contact, the inside jokes I wasn't part of, the way Sarah seemed more in tune with his words than mine. It was as if they shared a world I wasn't allowed to enter. Even our other friends noticed something was off. There were subtle comments, harmless jokes about how close they were, but I laughed them off, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. Then came the night that changed everything. We were at a friend's party, the usual gathering of our group, filled with drinks, laughter, and music. But something felt different. Sarah and Jake were inseparable that night, whispering in corners, exchanging glances that made my stomach churn. I tried to ignore it, but then I saw it, a moment so brief yet so damning that it made my blood run cold. Sarah had placed her hand on Jake's knee, a touch that was too intimate, too familiar, and when he looked at her, it wasn't the look of a friend. It was something more. Something I had never wanted to see. I confronted Sarah that night after we got home. At first, she denied everything, calling me crazy, accusing me of making something out of nothing. But I wasn't backing down. I had seen enough to know that this wasn't just friendship. Eventually, the truth spilled out. She admitted that she and Jake had grown closer, that they had been confiding in each other, sharing their feelings in ways that had crossed a line. She swore up and down that nothing physical had happened, that it was only emotional, but that didn't make it any less of a betrayal. The woman I loved had built an emotional connection with another man, my best friend. I was devastated. I couldn't wrap my head around how this had happened right under my nose. The worst part was realizing how deep it went. It wasn't just late-night texts or emotional confessions. They had created a bond that had shut me out completely. The connection I had once shared with Sarah had been transferred to Jake, and I was nothing more than an outsider looking in. I confronted Jake next, demanding answers. He didn't deny it. In fact, he looked guilty, ashamed, but he still tried to justify it. He told me that it hadn't started with bad intentions, that they had simply found comfort in each other. He swore he never meant to hurt me, but his words felt hollow. How could someone who claimed to be my best friend betray me like this? How could he let it get to this point? I wanted to hit him, to scream, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. But all I could do was walk away, feeling like my world had collapsed around me. The fallout was brutal. Word spread quickly within our friend group, and suddenly, everyone was forced to take sides. Some tried to stay neutral, but most people couldn't ignore the betrayal. Our once tight-knit group was fractured beyond repair. People who had been friends for years were now divided, forced to pick between me or Jake and Sarah. The tension at every gathering was unbearable. Some people cut ties completely, refusing to be part of the drama. Others tried to play peacemaker, urging me to forgive and move on. But how do you move on when your entire support system has been ripped apart? Sarah and I were barely speaking at this point. Every conversation ended in a fight, in accusations, in painful reminders of what had been lost. I couldn't look at her without seeing the betrayal in her eyes, without wondering how long she had been emotionally gone from our marriage. I didn't know what to do. Was emotional cheating something I could forgive? Was there even a chance of salvaging our marriage? Or was this just the beginning of the end? As for Jake, I wanted nothing to do with him. The man who had been like a brother to me was now a stranger. I blocked him, cut him off completely, but his presence still loomed over my life. Every time I heard his name, every time someone mentioned him, it was like reopening a wound that refused to heal. I was lost, unsure of what to do next. Should I try to fix things with Sarah, or was this the sign that our marriage was already over? Could I ever trust her again, knowing that she had given her heart, if not her body, to another man? And what about my friend group? Was there any hope of repairing the bonds that had been broken, or was this the end of the friendships I had held so dear? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing: this wasn't over. Not yet. Update. In the days that followed, everything felt like a waking nightmare. I was still living in the same house with Sarah, but it felt like we were nothing more than two strangers occupying the same space. Every conversation was filled with tension, every glance was a reminder of the betrayal. She kept trying to convince me that it had never been physical, that she had just been emotionally vulnerable and leaned on Jake in a way she shouldn't have. But that didn't make it any better. If anything, it made it worse. The fact that she had shared her heart with another man while I was right there, completely oblivious, made me feel like a fool. I started spending more time away from home, crashing on a friend's couch just to escape the suffocating air in our house. But even that wasn't easy because our entire friend group had been torn apart by what happened. Some people were avoiding me entirely, unsure of what to say or how to handle the situation. Others kept reaching out, trying to play mediator, telling me that I needed to sit down with Sarah and really listen to her side. But what was there to listen to? She had already made her choice, whether she wanted to admit it or not. Then there was Jake. I had completely cut him off, blocked his number, refused to acknowledge his existence. But that didn't stop him from trying to reach out. He sent emails, long-winded apologies about how he never meant to hurt me, about how he had been in a bad place emotionally and had leaned on Sarah in a way that he shouldn't have. He claimed that it had never been his intention to come between us, that he was disgusted with himself for letting it happen. But I didn't buy it. If he had truly cared about me, he would have shut it down before it ever got to this point. Then, the rumors started. Some people in our group claimed that it wasn't just emotional, that there had been something physical between them, but there was no real proof. Others said Sarah had confided in a mutual friend, admitting that while nothing had happened physically, she had thought about it, considered it, and that alone made me sick to my stomach. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Every time I thought I had a grasp on the situation, something else came up, making me question everything all over again. Sarah was desperate to fix things. She suggested couples therapy, saying that she was willing to do whatever it took to regain my trust. But how do you rebuild something that has been shattered so completely? I wasn't sure if I even wanted to try. Another update. After weeks of avoiding the inevitable, I finally agreed to sit down and talk with Sarah properly, without yelling, without accusations, just an honest conversation about where we stood. She was in tears before we even started, telling me how much she regretted what she had done, how she had never meant to hurt me. She admitted that she had gotten caught up in the emotional connection with Jake, that she had felt lonely in our marriage and had found comfort in his attention. But that was the part that hurt the most. She had been lonely, yet she never came to me. Instead, she had chosen to share her heart with someone else. I asked her point blank if she had ever thought about leaving me for him, and she hesitated. That hesitation was all I needed to know. She eventually shook her head and said no, but the damage had already been done. If she had even considered it, even for a second, then what was left for us? Our friend group was completely fractured at this point. Some people still spoke to both Sarah and Jake, but others had taken a hard stance against them. There were no more group outings, no more weekend get-togethers. Everything had been tainted by their actions. And the worst part? I found out that Jake had moved on quickly. He had started seeing someone new, which made me question everything. If he had been so emotionally connected to Sarah, how could he just jump into something else so fast? It made me wonder if he had ever truly cared about her, or if he had just enjoyed the thrill of stealing something that wasn't his. As for Sarah and me, we were at a standstill. She wanted to fix things, but I didn't know if I could. Every time I looked at her, I saw the betrayal, the lies, the emotional distance that had been there long before I even realized it. I wasn't sure if love was enough to fix this. Final update. After months of trying to navigate the wreckage of my marriage, I finally came to a decision. I couldn't do it anymore. No matter how much Sarah apologized, no matter how much she swore she would never let it happen again, the trust was gone. And without trust, what did we have left? I filed for divorce. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the only one that made sense. I couldn't spend the rest of my life wondering if she was being honest with me, if she was keeping secrets, if she still thought about Jake when she looked at me. The emotional connection she had built with him had destroyed everything we had, and there was no coming back from that. Sarah was devastated. She begged me to reconsider, but I stood my ground. I knew that if I stayed, I would never truly forgive her, and we would both be miserable. It was better to walk away now than to spend years resenting each other. As for our friend group, it never recovered. Some friendships fizzled out entirely, while others became strained beyond repair. People chose sides, and those who tried to remain neutral eventually drifted away from both of us. The group that had once been like a second family was gone, and I had to accept that. Jake? I never spoke to him again. As far as I was concerned, he was dead to me. I heard through the grapevine that he had moved out of town, that he was dating someone new and acting like nothing had ever happened. It disgusted me, but at the same time, I was done wasting my energy on him. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. Moving on wasn't easy. There were days when the pain hit me like a tidal wave, when I wondered if I had done the right thing. But with time, I started to heal. I focused on myself, on rebuilding my life without Sarah, without the friendships that had been lost. And slowly but surely, I realized that I was better off. I deserved someone who would choose me, who wouldn't seek comfort in someone else when times got tough. Looking back, I wish I had seen the signs sooner. I wish I had confronted things before they spiraled out of control. But at the end of the day, I learned a hard lesson about trust, about loyalty, and about the people I once considered family. Some betrayals cut too deep to ever truly heal. And sometimes, the only way to move forward is to let go of the past completely.